Hi, I'm Jake. I make RPG supplements and videos about Pathfinder 2, or PF2. I love Pathfinder 2. Oh, this is loot. I love kitties too. And hot cocoa. As you saw from the title, I'm covering witch patrons, not just because you all expect me to, but that's part of it, but also there are 3 brand new witch patrons here. They deserve to be talked about. Okay, so at the beginning of the Witch Patron section, there's a little blurb about how to use a deity as your patron, and mentions different deities that would go with each kind of patron. Yes, I know, I love you too. Please don't rub my lips. And then there's a little blurb about object familiars. The short version of it is that you no longer have to take the tough ability for a familiar before you can take the construct familiar ability. But you still have to take animated to give it a movement. So essentially it takes one less special ability selection than it used to. Cool. That's a nice benefit, because at low levels, those are really hard to come by. Alright, the witch patrons, I'll be covering the rehashes last, the BabaYaga, and I love you too. This is how I get cat hair in my beard. And the Mosquito Witch, because they aren't changed a lot, so there's not a lot to sing their praises on. So, new patrons. Choir Politic. When your patron speaks, it is a chorus of voices sounding as one. They first appeared to you in the faces of your neighbors in the middle of a town festival or council meeting, when the success of an endeavor hinged on everyone working together. With the strength of your patron behind you, you then rallied the community together for a common goal. This is the patron of friendship. Your patron might be a single entity gathering a coterie of subjects together for an unknown cause, or a like-minded covenant of deities and spirits. Whatever the case, your patron, and by extension you, understands that mortals are stronger together. Spell list divine. These are not all divine. Spell list divine. Patron skill society. Lesson of community knowledge. Your patron taught you the importance of pooling information to help a group with a common cause. You gain the Share Vision hex cantrip, and your familiar learns Share Lore. Share Lore is sometimes useful, but only sometimes. So Share Vision hex, what does that do? I'm going to cover that before the familiar. Share Vision. 1 action, cantrip 1 hex, concentrate, cantrip uncommon, which patron Choir Politic, range 30 feet. Target 1 willing creature, duration 10 minutes. Your patron temporarily links your vision with that of another, causing both of you to be able to see through each other's eyes. Awesome. For the duration of the hex, the 2 of you share any vision-based senses, such as dark vision or low light vision, and gain a +2 status bonus to perception checks, but if either of you are blinded or dazzled, you both are. If you cast Share Vision while a previous casting of this hex is still in effect, the previous effect ends. I'm sorry, I'm reading. Obviously, that's useful for a group, especially during scouting. But, you know, if people have special vision abilities, it's nice to just do. Its duration is 10 minutes. It's very handy for exploration. All right, so Familiar of Bolstering Aid is what the Choir Politic gives you for your familiar. Your familiar knows all manner of tricks that can help! ! When you cast or sustain a hex, and your familiar is adjacent to an ally, that ally gains a +2 status bonus to the next non-attack skill check that ally attempts before the start of your next turn. Cool. So, Faint and Demoralize. I know it's not just those, but those are going to be the most common. Obviously, that helps in a fight. Cool. I like the feel of it. I like the option for the familiar. It's not a shit ability, and that's kind of the best thing I can say about familiar abilities, because sometimes they're so underwhelming you don't want to choose them. Paradox of Opposites is the next patron. Life and death, good and evil, light and shadow, vitality and void energy, these diametrically opposed concepts exist everywhere, and your patron walks the line between them. He who walks behind the rose. You first encountered your patron in a place or situation of such duality, such as witnessing a baby being born in a cemetery, or feeling the natural light of a sunbeam in an otherwise dark cavern. There is power to be derived from the interplay between seemingly antithetical ideas and striking a balance between the two. Your patron could be a monitor demigod interested in cultivating a cosmic balance, or an entity that plays fast and loose with morality. They are the difference between the two sides of the same coin while also being the entirety of the coin. Union of opposites, I would call this. It's a very witchy, Wiccan feel union of two different things means creation as a whole. Spell list divine, patron skill religion, lesson of the Twilight Soul. I read Twit Soul, so we'll go with Twilight. Lesson of the Twilight Soul. For your patron, life and death and sleeping and waking have the same meaning. You gain the trade death for life hex cantrip, and your familiar learns sleep. Sleep is useful. I like that choice. All right, let's see what trade death for life does. Trade death for life. 1 action. Cantrip 1. Uncommon cantrip healing. Hex manipulate witch. Patron paradox of opposites. Range 30 feet. Targets 1 creature. Defense fortitude. Duration sustained up to 1 minute. Your patron steals life from one of your enemies to grant it to another. The target takes 1d4 void damage, basic fortitude save. If the target takes damage, a willing creature within the hex's range gains fast healing 1 for as long as you sustain the hex. The target takes damage only once from the spell, whether or not you sustain it. Every rank it's heightened. The damage increases by 1d4, and the fast healing increases by 1. The duration is sustained up to a minute. Fuck yes! It's nice to have an option for a healing spell that comes directly from a patron. Fast healing is really nice. That's a good, powerful spell. It's very useful. Alright, so let's check the familiar ability. Paradox of Opposites has the familiar of Paired Perplexity, which is fun to say. Familiar of Paired Perplexity. Your familiar has twice as many of a small feature that a normal creature would have, such a second tail, such as a second tail, or an extra pair of whiskers. When you cast or sustain a hex, your familiar seems to double and be in 2 places at once. One creature you choose within 20 feet of it is stupefied 1 till the start of your next turn. This is a visual effect. There's no save. Fuck yes! Great! This ability is use a hex cantrip to screw a caster. Yeah, that's awesome. It obviously has great purposes there, and it's not so niche as you think. And it's also for anything that casts spells, so like demons. The Unseen Broker. I am so glad this theme exists because it was missing. And I made a character that is this and would have used it. The Unseen Broker. Whether in a dream, answering a feeling in your heart, or enacting a mysterious ritual, you have agreed to act as a mediator between your patron and the rest of the world. Of course, you understand the power of deals and receive further knowledge in exchange for your service. The Ferengi Patron. Your patron might be a god, an enigmatic figure like a planar being, or even an alien entity like a Ferengi. Regardless of their origin, it is clear that through the bargains you make with others, you advance your patron's agenda. Gold Press Latinum. Spell list, occult. Yay! Patron skill, occultism. I'm just glad it's not divine. Divine isn't crap, but we have 3 now that are divine. That's enough. Lesson of the Bound Words. Your patron teaches you about bargains and how they can hold power over others. You gain the Pact Broker Hex cantrip, and your familiar learns Command. Command is actually quite useful. Mostly just for a turn, but still useful. The Pact Broker Hex cantrip, let's read that. 1 action, cantrip 1, uncommon auditory cantrip, concentrate, hex, linguistic, mental witch. Patron the Unseen Broker, range 30 feet, targets 1 creature, defense will. Duration sustained up to a minute. You offer to broker a pact of peace. Really? That's the only option? If the target accepts and doesn't take hostile actions against you and your allies during the hex's duration, you take a -1 status penalty to deception checks to lie to them. If they refuse and take a hostile action against you or an ally during the hex's duration, they must first attempt a will save. If they accepted the offer and then take a hostile action against you or an ally during the hex's duration, they must first attempt a will save and treat the result as 1 category worse. Okay? So if they refuse, it's a fail, basically, or whatever. It's worse if they agree and then go back on their word. Regardless of the outcome, the target is then temporarily immune for 1 minute. Success, the target is unaffected. Failure, the target takes 2d4 mental damage and a -1 status penalty to attack and damage rolls against you and your allies for the hex's duration. Critical failure, as failure, but the penalty is -2. Heightened, every rank does 1d4 extra damage. I like that this is basically a sanctuary for everyone. This is an awesome way to get the sanctuary spell repeatedly if you want it. Very nice for keeping certain members safe. That is a very powerful, very useful hex. Now, what does a familiar do? Familiar of enticing negotiation. Your familiar constantly whispers distracting offers of power, wealth, and other temptations to your enemies, even if your familiar normally doesn't have the means of speaking. When you cast or sustain a hex and your familiar is within 10 feet of an enemy, that's pretty close, the enemy becomes off guard until the start of your next turn. The familiar can only distract a single enemy per round in this way, but it's off guard to everybody. And if it were me, I would have the familiar doing all sorts of stupid antics, like, acting like it's poking its own eyes out, or just making silly faces, or shouting, or just really distracting the enemy somehow. I don't know, running around their feet. This is useful. This isn't just useful. This is good. I personally like this feel a lot. And it's not always the case, but its abilities, the familiar ability and the hex, match the intention. The theme is cohesive. And I like that. It's easier to tell a story that way. And it makes you feel like you're really in that mindset when you're playing the character. All right, so now the two... I just love this guy, Unseen Broker Witch. Look at this dude. He's just like, this raven has told me of your flaws. Would you like to rectify this matter? Yeah. Very Faustian. So the rare witch patrons. I'm probably not going to have a lot to say about these because they're just redos of the old ones. Fine. I'll read the intro to the rare witch patrons just because it's here. Occasionally, a witch's patron makes themselves known to their servitor. These beings are larger-than-life figures whose notoriety is a part of their power. Often their names are whispered in hushed, reverent tones by those aware of them for fear of accidentally invoking their ire. Though their patronage of a witch isn't shrouded in mystery, the patron's true goals usually are. It's fine. It's just the only two named witch patrons. BabaYaga, rare patron. I love BabaYaga. Your patron is BabaYaga, the Queen of Witches. You are most likely a young woman who has been thrown into events far above your head, though you might also be a young man or a brave knight who has sworn your loyalty to the old witch. That could have happened in the stories about BabaYaga. You may have demanded BabaYaga's aid and somehow escaped unscathed for your audacity. In one tale, she had 4 knights that served her, so that fits too. She may have reached out to you by sending a messenger in the form of an animated object, such as a mortar that had grown legs. She may have instead appeared before you herself, demanding you aid her with some nigh impossible chore. Also true to folklore. This is neat. While many fail these tasks and end up becoming a meal for BabaYaga or meet even worse fates because she rigs them, you prevailed and earned her respect. Her gift to you is her patronage and your life. Spell list occult, of course, patron skill occultism. Lesson of Baba's understanding. BabaYaga teaches you to be more like her, allowing you to transfer spirits into objects and freeze your foes. You gain the spirit object hex cantrip and your familiar learns chilling spray. Yeah, chilling spray, okay. So let's look first at the spirit object hex cantrip. It has changed slightly, but it doesn't really matter. Spirit object, 1 action. Rare cantrip hex manipulate witch. Range 30 feet, targets 1 unattended object up to 1 bulk, duration 1 minute. Using a sliver of BabaYaga's power, you briefly bring a nearby object to life. The object gains a means of locomotion if it does not already have one, such as sprouting chicken legs. Yeah. And strides up to 25 feet to a space you decide within range. Once per round, you can sustain the spell to command the object further, either prompting it to move again or to strike. If prompted to move, the object strides up to 25 feet again to a space within 30 feet of you. If prompted to strike, the object makes 1 creature of your choice adjacent to its space. What? If prompted to strike, the object attacks 1 creature of your choice adjacent to its space. Make a melee spell attack roll against the creature. On a success, the creature takes 2d4 damage. The damage is either bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage as appropriate for the object. The object doesn't do anything if it doesn't receive further commands from you. If you cast Spirit Object again, any previously affected object reverts back to normal. You can dismiss the spell. It doesn't say that it doesn't flank the enemy, so it does. Heightened +1, so every rank increase the maximum bulk of the target by 1 and the damage by 2d4. Of course, I'm picturing Beauty and the Beast, a wardrobe smacking people and trapping itself in its chest. Okay, so the main difference is that it does a little bit less damage to start with, and the damage increases pretty significantly as it levels. So overall, it's a little bit better. A little. But it is better. And it's fun. Alright, so the familiar that she gives you is a familiar of obscuring snowfall. Your familiar is always covered in a thin layer of snow, which it sheds as needed. When you cast or sustain a hex, you can cause clinging snow to fall in a 5-foot burst centered on a square of your familiar's space. This snowfall remains until the start of your next turn, and enemies that enter these squares during that period are dazzled until the start of your next turn. Familiar of Obscuring Snowfall? I'm just glad that BabaYaga has a special familiar ability now. It is pretty much what I expected. It's good. I'm just glad it's usable now. I mean, she's usable now. Next patron, Mosquito Witch. Now, is it me, or is the Mosquito Witch adherent just disturbing? Look at that freaking mask. That's messed up. Mosquito Witch, rare patron. Your patron is a mysterious being known as the Mosquito Witch. You do not know why you were chosen, and in many cases you wish that you hadn't been. She may have made herself known to you through terrifying prophetic visions and nightmares, or you might have instead received her patronage in the form of swarming insects, their buzzing opening your ears to magic and their bites filling your body with power. Frightening events plague your wake. Strange accidents, dead animals, and glowing red eyes in the darkness. 'Cause Mothman. Whether or not you're aware of the Mosquito Witch's influence, you have an affinity with insects and typically draw their attention wherever you go. Gross. Spell list, primal, patron skill, nature, obviously. Lesson of the Unbridled Hive. The Mosquito Witch grants you control over insects. You gain the Buzzing Bites Hex cantrip, and your familiar learns Pest Form. That is the same as it was before, but I'm going to read the hex anyway. Buzzing Bites. 1 action cantrip, 1 rare cantrip, Hex Manipulate, which range 30 feet, targets 1 creature, defense fortitude, duration sustained up to 1 minute, so it's a hex. You evoke buzzing and crawling insects to climb onto a foe's body and bite, dealing 1d4 piercing damage or potentially sickening the foe, depending on its fortitude save. Once the spell ends, the target becomes temporarily immune for 1 minute. Critical success, the target's unaffected. Success, the target takes half damage. Failure, the target takes full damage. Critical failure, the target takes double damage and is sickened 1 by the crawling insects. I love this hex. I always have, because it's gross and creepy. The sickened value can't be reduced below 1 while the spell is active. It's just amazing. Heightened every rank increases the damage by 1d4. Really good hex. And what Mosquito Witch gives you is Familiar of Swarm's Heart. Your familiar is surrounded by a cloud of harmless insects. Ew, God, I would never want to have that familiar. When you cast or sustain a hex, the insects swarm to protect you and your allies. Until the start of your next turn, your familiar grants concealment to you or any ally while sharing the same space. Hey, that matters. A mischance is great. That's a very good familiar ability. I guess the same thing is true for the familiar of Obscuring Snowfall. Makes people dazzled. Okay, both of these are protective and useful. And I'm just really glad that the unique named patrons are updated to the remaster. Because BabaYaga was not getting enough attention, not the attention she deserves, and I love the way they wrote about her theme. They packed more lore and folklore, that's also lore, myth in there. Yeah, my favorite is the Unseen Broker Witch, because it fits something that I want to play. Simple as that. Its abilities are good and useful, and it's... the occult spell list gives you Sanctuary anyway, so it's really not that big of a deal, but you can basically have Sanctuary at will, and you don't have to spend the slot on it, and it's really useful. Alright, I'm glad that we have new witch patrons, because more options for witches is more better. Do any of you specifically want to play one of these 5 witch patrons? I won't say new, because they're not all new. But do you prefer them to the witch patrons you have right now? I actually do prefer the Unseen Broker, even though I love the theme and folklore behind Paradox of Opposites. It just fits my personal history. Wicca. Thank you for joining me for this additional edition, of Divine Mystery coverage. And if you're a patron, thank you for caring for Loot and all of his sillies all the time. Even if he's drooling on the table because he loves duck. At the end of this month, we are doing a giveaway for a 9-piece set of dice that are winter-themed. They look like ice crystals. and a 45mm. It's all one drawing for patrons. So the patron drawing is on the 1st, and you have to be a patron of $5 or more before then if you want to enter into the drawing. The link for Patreon is in the description, but feel free to just like join us on the Discord server. It's fun, and we make lots of builds there and theory craft, and there's just lots of helpful people. And we talk about food a lot and music, and we're nerds. All right, if you want to catch up on War of Immortals, I'm still putting out content on that. And Divine Mysteries, here. Thank you for being here. Cat butt.